And it is time to welcome in our friend Ryan Wilson, CBSSports.com with the First Pick podcast. You're out of costume.
No, here's the thing. I'm dressed up as Adam Gold for Halloween. Look at that. Two handsome guys.
That's right. We have the same
screen.
haircut. Look at that. I enjoyed your Rick Spielman.
Yeah, you know what's weird about that? So I got an old man wig off of Amazon and some granny glasses, and I dressed up as Rick Spielman. He didn't recognize who it was, and Rick joked that when he was a Vikings GM, some of his employees would dress up as him as well, and they would cut the shirts off of their dress shirts and run around because he's a meathead at heart. So I did that as well. He dressed up, and I was talking to Victoria about this. He looks like Cam Newton with the tall hat on and the feathery whatever around the bow around his neck. He was actually a fortune teller. I was like, Rick, no one's going to know who that is, so I'm just going to call you Cam Newton, and we'll go from there.
Oh, that's hysterical. So you did that, so because he looked like Cam. That was fantastic. When Cam got the gig on ESPN, I joked, I'm like, I'm not going to be able to listen because it's on. He's normally on when we're on the show, but it's always on in the studio, and the whatever he wore the other day absolutely floored me. I don't need to hear anything Cam says. I think Cam is a smart football guy, but my gosh, the hats are next level. Let's start, Ryan Wilson, with Bryce Young getting another start. It's almost painful to listen to Dave Canales and Bryce Young, for that matter, talk about what we all saw, which was disastrous after the first drive in Denver. He's going to get another start. How can it be different than what we just saw? Because what we just saw, I don't care who you play, and Denver's got a good defense, but it was so bad and so non-threatening that I just don't know how they're going to make that look good unless they change their approach.
Yeah, that's the question. And you're working. You don't have 6 months to fix this. You got 6 days, and it's been bad. Not even just mediocre or just below average. It's been hard to watch at times. And as Rick Spielman says, and he's a huge Bryce Young fan, but the Carolina Panthers feel like a homecoming team every week. Like they're the team you put on the schedule when you want to make sure you get a win, when all the people come back to watch the football game. And that's not where you want to be as a professional franchise. And look, hope ain't a plan, but you're playing the Saints. They're banged up. They have struggled as well. They have quarterback issues because Derek Carr's hurt, and their rookie Spencer Rattler hasn't looked great. They replaced him with Jake Hayner. We know about that, and they've had some injuries up and down the roster. So maybe you're hoping for a situation where something clicks, the running game can get going. Chuba Hubbard's been one of the few sort of bright spots. Xavier Legette is coming along. They moved on from Deontay Johnson, which, as Steelers fans will tell you, you sort of saw that coming. He didn't seem to be super pumped to be there, and he said he was, had a breath, let out a breath when he was traded to Baltimore. So make of that what you will. But in terms of the short-term fix, I don't know what it is. And the other thing we talk about all the time, Adam, is that this ain't Dave Canales' quarterback, right?
Right.
So we know that the owner can be impetuous in terms of moving on from guys, whether it's a coaching staff or in this case a quarterback. I'm sort of surprised he hasn't been traded. I thought maybe that would be on the table. Maybe this is one last audition, and then you figure things out from here. I just don't envision a situation where next year Bryce is on the team.
I agree. And I may have said this to you. The way Dave Canales has approached this, it almost seems to me like he has gone about the business of proving that Bryce can't play as opposed to that he can. They have been terrified. I joked on Twitter that they saw that one touchdown drive, and the touchdown pass to Xavier Legette was good, right? It was a little bit behind him, but he threw it, a red zone touchdown from the pocket. I thought short guys weren't supposed to be able to complete those passes, but he managed to. And at that point, they stopped throwing the ball vertically except when it became too late. And it wasn't even about winning the game. It was about just looking credible. But let me ask you this, because I know your podcast that you just recently dropped was about a mock draft. So are there quarterbacks that not could go one, because that's silly to me, should go one? Or is there a quarterback that should go number one? Because I can't believe there's anybody in this draft better than Travis Hunter.
Oh, that's funny you say that. So Rick Spielman had the first overall pick, and we alternated, and Carolina obviously has the first pick as we sit here. And he said, hold my nose, let's fix Bryce Young, which seems like a stretch, but he took Travis Hunter, to your point, because he is special, and he solves problems on both sides of the ball. So you're getting a 2-for-1 in that sense. And it feels like at the heart a lot harder to whiff on a Travis Hunter than it is on a quarterback who, as we've seen in Bryce's draft class, Anthony Richardson just got benched. You just don't know for a myriad of reasons. There's not a quarterback in this class that I think should go number one right now, especially if you're comparing it to last year's class with Caleb or Jaden Daniels or even Drake May. All those quarterbacks would come in as QB 4, maybe 5 if you like Michael Penix Jr. a little better, and I sort of do. Shedeur Sanders is playing well, but is he a Caleb Williams type talent? I don't think so. Cam Ward has had a fantastic season, but going into the season, scouts will tell you they wanted to see him play on time more consistently and minimize the silly mistakes, and he has done that. But I don't know if that's enough to catapult him to number one. And if you take either of those guys at Carolina, then the question becomes, is there enough around those players, like there wasn't with Bryce, to suddenly turn things around like this was Houston or this was Washington? And I think the answer to that right now is no. So I think Travis Hunter makes a lot of sense for me because you're getting a player who can help you on both sides of the ball, and then you figure out the quarterback situation at some point.
That's what I would do, but I would have done that before. It's not that I wouldn't have drafted Bryce, and people know this. When we looked at all 4, Bryce was the guy I thought was the best. I mean, I don't have to be right. It doesn't look like I'm going to be, and I'm okay with that. But, I don't think I was alone. I think there was consensus might not be the right word, but I think there was a majority of people that were leaning Bryce over everybody else. It must have been because if we were just drafting off the measurables, then nobody would have drafted Bryce. But it seemed like at least half, maybe more, were in his camp. Hunter, can you play both at the NFL level?
So here's what Rick and I talk about this a lot, and here's what Rick will tell you, and I think it makes sense, right? And I remember talking to Scott about this back in August, asking him that very question. He said, I like him now as a cornerback. He's a little more refined there. Also, anecdotally, it feels like there's less chance of injury. He's gotten hurt. Last year, Colorado State, he got hurt on the cheap shot playing offense. This year, Kansas State, he got hurt coming across the middle, playing both times on offense. That said, you can play him 40, 50 snaps on defense and have a package of 15 or 20 snaps on offense because it would be silly not to, but you don't want to have a situation where he can't play 100 snaps a game in the NFL. That's just not sustainable at that size. So I think you have to figure out a balance where you get him 65 to 70 snaps, divide it up however you want to, but you have to utilize his talents, especially if he's going to a terrible team that needs his talents utilized.
All right, so here's the way I would look at it. Ryan Wilson, CBSSports.com at Ryan Wilson, CBS. How do we view him as a cornerback? Is he a elite shutdown corner? And how important that is, how much does that separate you from other teams versus what is he as a wide receiver? Is he an elite top, tier wide receiver? Maybe not in the Justin Jefferson mode or players like that, but a legit number one wide receiver? And how much does that separate you? I would be more inclined to leave him at cornerback, and then, as you said, just feature him, a handful of plays on the offensive side, because those are the guys I think that change your team.
Yeah, so we can do a little thought experiment here. Would you rather have Sauce Gardner full-time or Devonta Smith full-time? I'm just sort of doing some general comps of what Travis Hunter is. Travis is a little more explosive than Devonta Smith, but who would you rather have on your team full-time in terms of impacting wins and losses?
Well, as a former Jets fan, somebody who's watching Sauce Gardner kind of go through the motions this year, I would say I'd rather have that position. I don't want to use Sauce Gardner. I've been kind of, as just observing the Jets, and I was going to get to the Jets before we were done, I've kind of been disappointed in Sauce this year. Let me move on to Russell Wilson. I think we kind of all criticized the move to Russ because we had seen Russ for 3 years just be so average or worse. And I know he wasn't good last week against the Giants, but he was great on that Sunday night, especially after the first quarter. Is this the long-term, for this year, correct move for the Steelers?
Yeah. And I would argue he actually was pretty good against the Giants. Steelers fans will tell you that as well. And I'm a Steelers fan, so I had very little expectations coming in. And prior to Russ's arrival, I thought Justin Fields did make some sense because of the athleticism. Mm-hmm. But there's no denying that Justin Fields was up and down those first 6 games, and the down part was just throwing the ball down the field. And Russ gives you that. Now, he had the fumble in that Giants game. Right. That certainly was an issue. But his ability to throw the ball down the field is what he's always been good at. And I think it's not necessarily an indictment against Sean Payton, but it was clear that those guys weren't going to work well together. Sean Payton came in obviously after Russ was there in Denver, and they were oil and water from day one. The other thing I think is incredibly important, and you guys know this as watching the Panthers closely, it matters who's dialing up plays. Personnel is important, but Arthur Smith wasn't necessarily a popular hire among Steelers fans.
Right.
But he runs the ball. Najee Harris is playing some of his best football, and he throws play-action deep balls to George Pickens. It's not complicated, but he's doing it, and they're executing, and the defense is helping them out. They're not a Super Bowl team, but this team is better than people thought, which is typically what we say about a Mike Tomlin team in the post-Big Ben era.
All right, let's get to the Jets. Funny, isn't Aaron Rodgers the real problem?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, or you can say it as loudly as you want. But when you fire everybody and your team still stinks and you're the only person left in the room, like the Will Smith meme, I mean, who are you going to fire? The other thing is this, Adam, and I'm curious what you think about this. So even when they traded for Devonta Smith, and we talked about this on the podcast, I was not convinced that next year, September 15th or whenever the start of the season is, either Aaron Rodgers or Devontae Adams will be on that team. So basically you've blown draft picks. The team is worse than it was 2 weeks ago, and you have to blow up everything over the summer to try to fix this mess. Oh,
yeah, the Jets are going to be – well, see, the thing is they've got some good personnel, right? I think they're building an offensive line, whether it's the kid they got from Penn State at tackle or Elijah Vera-Tucker if he stays healthy. I think they have some pieces there. They still have Garrett Wilson, who I'm going to guess that once Aaron Rodgers is out of town – will go back to being a much better player. I don't know why he's bad with Rodgers, but he has seemingly become bad. They've got good pieces at running back, whether it's Hall or Allen. They've got some ability, but I think their quarterback right now and the whole, I guess, vibe is kind of holding them back. But they are going to take an enormous step back. I do think their defense has not been as good as they hoped,
right?
And it was never going to be as good as it was a year ago or 2 years ago. But it is interesting this year. Last year at this time, the Jets were, 4-4?
With Zach Wilson.
With Zach Wilson at quarterback, who is now the third-string quarterback in Denver. You brought up, before I let you go, Ryan Wilson, CBSSports.com, you brought up Anthony Richardson. Like, is this a punishment? Like, legitimately a punishment benching? Because if it is, I don't really understand that. But I don't know. Is that what this is?
I don't think so. I think Shane Steichen is above board in terms of what he's trying to accomplish. It's been a weird, sort of tenuous route to get to where we are in terms of Anthony Richardson finding his way to the bench for Joe Flacco. And he played 13 games in college. We knew what we were getting. He has not been as good as perhaps they wanted him to be in terms of progressing from year one to this year. He was hurt last year for much of it.
Yeah.
But I don't know if benching solves anything. And he's a great kid. He's from a small town. He's not looking to push his brand or whatever we're talking about with kids at times. And I just think he hasn't played well. I don't think tapping out because he was tired. Everyone to a person says just lie. Don't say you're tired. But tapping out, I don't think it has anything to do with it. The other thing is this: if you're benching him now, you don't know what you have. You're not going to the Super Bowl with Joe Flacco anyway. So that to me seems like almost waving the white flag. Not quite as obvious as it was with Bryce Young, but it's a setback for a young quarterback who probably needs to play more.
All right, I lied. One final question. There have been 3 high-profile wide receivers moved. I'm not counting Deontay Johnson in this, but which team did the best for them that will make the biggest impact?
I mean, this guy is probably the furthest down, the closest to retirement, I should say. That's D-Hop going to Kansas City because he doesn't have to be the dude there. He can just play in the middle of the field next to Travis Kelce and catch balls on 3rd and 5 that go for 6 or 7 yards and keep moving the sticks. And then you open things up for Xavier Worthy, who can just run, for go routes all day long. I think that's the biggest impact to an offense that sort of sputtered, but they sort of sputtered to being undefeated. So I like D-Hop going to KC.
There is no team that does undefeated better than
right.
I mean, they look awful, and you go, well, they haven't lost yet, and they've also. It's not like they've beaten nobodies. They've had a very difficult schedule, and they just keep winning. That's what happens when you've got Patrick Mahomes and the best coach in the league right now in Andy Reid. Ryan Wilson, CBSSports.com with the First Pick podcast. You pull off Rick Spielman very well, sir. Happy Halloween to you. I'll talk to you later.
Thank you, Adam.